What's going on? It's your boy Dalton from the Petrol List, and I don't know if you saw the Monaco GP. It was the Monaco GP. What I will say is that lap one, turn one, even though it wasn't Lando Norris versus Max Verstappen, he did have quite a formidable adversary sitting with him in the front row in one Ferrari driving Charles Leclerc. And kind of as I said last week, Lando Norris, in my opinion, and I think the data backs me up, I haven't checked, but I think the data backs me up. Lando Norris is actually the faster of the McLaren drivers, and not to say that Oscar Piastri isn't lightning quick, but if we're just talking about pace, I think Lando Norris has him beat. And like I said last episode, the only thing that Lando is really missing is the mentality of getting his elbows out. Now, let's go back to what I was talking about for lap one, turn one. He was on the front row with one Charles Leclerc, and what looked like a mistake, and I'm watching it right now, what looked like a mistake, I'm going to hit pause and put this up on the screen. Lando Norris, lap one, turn one, had a lockup, and I think all of the commentators were like, "Oh my gosh, he's got a lockup. How's that going to affect him moving forward? Is there going to be a flat spot on the tires that's going to be so bad that he's going to have to pull into the pits, and then that's going to take away from his track position?" But if we keep watching the race, what he did, he just kept driving. And sure, there's probably some discomfort, but I'm sure he's realizing that last year was his big chance to win a championship. And right now, he's got his elbows out. And you know what? This adversity that he's experiencing in this season might set him up to be a long-term champion in the future, because I don't see the McLaren car slowing down. Now, 2026 might be a completely different thing. Sorry, I'm hitting pause again. Monaco is looking a little bit like a traffic jam these days. I can't wait for the new regulations. Now, I don't think that Monaco is something that they should take off of the schedule, but I think it is something that they should have considered taking out of the schedule, considering how large the cars have gotten. Now, the new cars, they're not as small as even a 2017 car, but this represents the first time, I think, in about 10 years that the cars have gotten smaller instead of bigger, so we are taking a step in the right direction. Now, Lando, he got his elbows out in turn one, and then we've got a traffic jam going on. We have got Bortoleto. He is out in the first lap. That brings forward a yellow flag, and we have got Lando Norris with Charles Leclerc in chase. And let's not forget that if Hamilton hadn't picked up the 3-place grid penalty, he would be right there in fourth position, either blocking for his teammate Charles Leclerc by kind of getting in the way of Max Verstappen, or he would have possibly been up there battling Piastri. Either way, it would have been a relief to Charles Leclerc, who really just needed to focus in on Lando Norris. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Ferrari versus McLaren versus Red Bull. Now, currently, Red Bull is kind of a one-man show. We've got Tsunoda, starting way down there. He's doing a better job in car number 2 than have a lot of other drivers. But still, Red Bull is kind of a one-man show, and that is very much reflected in the World Constructors Championship, whereas Norris and Piastri, this year, either of them could win the championship. And then we've got Mercedes with George Russell and Kimi Antonelli with a surprising grid start of, I want to say it was either 12th and 13th or 13th and 14th. They both started out on the hard tires, trying to make a long game of it, although tire deg was so, I guess, favorable to the cars that you didn't really need to go on a long stint, and that reflected later on when we were way over halfway through the race and most everybody had done a pit stop except for Mercedes. I think that Mercedes' season is going downhill. They've got, some terrible engine issues, and I think strategy is kind of reflecting the meltdown. So we've got Verstappen, who basically is the Red Bull team right now. And then we've got Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. Now, something I want to say about Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton is that for a driver who just joined Ferrari, Hamilton seems to be adjusting quite well. So I kind of look at the drivers versus one another and how they are adjusting versus the cars because, Formula One is almost a spec series except for where it counts. So the cars can be massively different. But if we look at Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, they started this race in a pretty good, proximity to one another. The Williams cars started fairly close to one another. The Mercedes cars started fairly close to one another, as did the McLarens. So when everybody's saying that Hamilton should retire, he's actually looking quite par for the course. And let's not forget about Fernando Alonso, who last won a championship in 2007 and last won a race when the iPhone 5C was new. I think Bortoleto hit a wall and he is out, and then Gasly also made some contact with something and his wheel fell off and he was out, and that was all by lap 9. Let's talk very briefly about the two-stop strategy for the Monaco GP. I thought that was going to be a very good thing for the racing, but what it actually led to were the secondary drivers kind of driving slow to try to make a free kind of pit stop for the lead drivers, and it had half of the grid driving quite slow. I think it was both Sainz and Russell were complaining about how slow Albon was going. And we had a little bit of that going on with Norris as well. And it just kind of made for a mess. I think that although the Monaco track, it's got the glitz and the glam and the yachts and everything, I'm just really not convinced that it's a great race. As far as pure spectacle goes, it's not a great race for this generation of cars. These cars are just too big. And although Charles Leclerc definitely had the pace on Lando Norris, it was something like you had to have a time differential of 3 seconds in order to successfully make a pass. So what ends up happening is you have Charles Leclerc closing in on Lando Norris to no effect, and also Piastri's drift. I want to say that, what lap was that? Piastri had a drift. He looked like he was driving a rally car. It was pretty great. Lap 43, Oscar Piastri. Let me see if I can hit pause on that. Drifting around the corner. That was quite great. I'm going to put that on the screen. But yeah, it just makes you wonder if they shouldn't have used some sort of discernment when they were saying that Monaco is going to be on the track list for this year. I'm not convinced that it should have been. You rewind that one more time. And also, Fernando Alonso, his car died. He's definitely one of the unluckiest drivers on the grid. And I don't know, what is there to say about Aston Martin? They're not winning races, and they're not getting rid of drivers that can't win races. They did add Adrian Newey, but I've always believed that one man or one woman does not a racing team make. And we've got quite possibly 2 drivers that maybe shouldn't be on the grid right now driving for Aston Martin. And I think that is a little bit of their downfall. But not to worry. Lawrence Stroll has plenty of dollars in the bank account to fund his bad decisions. It was frustrating to watch to watch Monaco with Charles Leclerc frantically trying to get around Lando Norris because he did have the pace, but there was no space. Pace, but no space to put the pass on. And it just kind of makes me feel like, besides the spectacle of all the yachts and the celebrities and, of course, the cash flow, I think Monaco is a terrible, 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 terrible track for the cars this year. Lap 53, we had, sorry, I think it was prior to lap 53, but we had George Russell pass off of the track, and I think he was betting on a 5-second penalty, and I think that his big mistake was saying, I'll take the penalty. And the FIA, not to be outdone by a driver saying, I'll take the penalty, awarded him a 20-second penalty, or a drive-through, which is essentially a 20-second penalty. And this is when neither Mercedes car had a pit stop already. So they were both essentially taken out of the race. Antonelli did the same thing, gaining advantage by going off track. He gave up the place, and I think that both Mercedes ended outside of the points. Moving forward, I think it's going to be a Red Bull, McLaren, and possibly Ferrari race for the first and second spots in both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship. Drivers' Championship obviously is a lot closer. And I think at this point, lots of other teams are falling off the wayside. Now, that said, Lando versus Oscar is going to be very fun to watch. It'll be fun to watch Charles Leclerc get up in the mix as well. And as always, no one can ever count out Max Verstappen. So I think that this second half, or whatever half of Formula One, I think it's going to be a really good season. But I think that it's going to be one of the McLaren duo that wins the Drivers' Championship. And I, for one, am excited to see which. Now, I think that this could very well be Norris's last chance to win the championship, because I feel like Oscar Piastri is a very quick learner, and he's going to learn race after race how to not only improve his qualifying times, but I think he still has a little bit more of the racecraft than Lando Norris does. And right now, because the Formula One cars are so big, it bodes well for Lando Norris's driving style, which means you get out in front and it's really hard to pass. Once the cars get a little bit smaller, other drivers are going to be able to get a little bit braver. And if Lando Norris doesn't change his mentality, I think that he might fall prey to the likes of Piastri, Verstappen, and Hamilton, possibly even Antonelli and Hadjar as they get into the new regulations. And of course, that depends on how the cars are doing. That's been the Petrolist. That's the video for today, and I hope you guys tune in soon. I got a whole lot of subscribers based on some of my previous content, so thanks one and all for doing that, for jumping on. I promise to attempt to make content worth watching. I am not traveling very much in the near future, so we're going to have views of my gorgeous studio, including the on-air thing that I got off of Amazon. Pretty happy about that. This has been the Petrolist. I have been Dalton, and you have been great. I will talk to you next time.